We've all felt this invisible weight on our shoulders at some point in life. It's something no one else sees, but it's carried within us, growing silently at night, until eventually you feel the need to say, enough. This is where grace truly begins, at that new boundary you set for yourself, a value that no one can trample on. Especially as you grow older, you realize that being strong doesn't mean shouting or screaming. It's more about choosing yourself. Of course, letting go of habits that consume you, especially patterns that hold you back, and behaviors you've been repeating automatically for years, is actually the sharpest form of courage. Because, as you know, grace comes from mastering your inner discipline first. That's how it emerges. Of course, let's not forget this truth either. Grace is never an accident. We must strive for it. We must fight for it. You need to do this for yourself, in short, for your appearance, for your energy, and most importantly, for your own values. Because the world may want you to age quickly and comfortably, but you can consciously choose to let your own light shine brighter. When you choose habits that empower you instead of those that wear you down, your posture naturally becomes stronger, your lines begin to soften, and your gaze deepens considerably. Now, before we start the video, I'd like to ask you for one small thing. Write, "I'm taking back my elegance" in the comments. Because this sentence is not just a simple sentence, it is a small but powerful decision that will actually reprogram your mind. When you write this, you will have chosen not to remain in your old state. Let's start with the first point right away. 1. In clothing, prioritize fabric quality over quantity. What many people don't realize, but is actually one of the most fundamental building blocks of elegance, is the quality of the fabric. Because even though color or style may be what catches the eye at first glance, it is actually the texture of the fabric that silently takes on the entire posture of the person wearing it, becoming the foundation and displaying it perfectly. Now, here's how I see it. A quality fabric, for example, with the way it catches the light, or the natural harmony it creates on the skin, I would even say, with its durability that stands the test of time, anchors a person's presence in a much calmer, more dignified, and truly more aesthetic space. For this reason, we can see that instead of increasing the amount of clothes in the wardrobe, a few well-chosen pieces can very simply transform a person's appearance into a better shape. The key here is, of course, simplicity and quality. Fabric quality is not just an aesthetic detail. It is a tangible reflection of a woman's self-respect, her conscious choices, and her taste, which has matured over the years. Because if we take a closer look, high-quality fabric gives a person a real sense of confidence, both when touched and when worn. It's like carrying an invisible armor around your body that says, "I am worthy of this." In contrast, clothing made from cheap and much more quickly worn-out materials often represents a haste and randomness that overshadows our elegance. We feel this. So, on a good day, well-processed cotton, breathable silk, or timeless cashmere, for example, are not just clothing for women, they become a character choice. The important point here is that quality fabric does not just look good in the window display, it also reveals itself much more easily as time goes by. Because fabrics that do not lose their shape after a few washes, do not fade in color, and provide a natural flow when worn support both the dynamism of a woman's daily life and the integrity of her appearance. Thus, as wardrobes change over the years, quality pieces retain their longevity. In fact, they often become the most frequently reached for staples. This naturally ensures the sustainability of elegance. In other words, instead of a temporary sparkle or shine, a lasting aesthetic rhythm is achieved. In short, investing in fabric quality is actually a sign of the long-term respect a woman promises herself. Because remember, elegance in mature women is never accidental. It arises from conscious, realistic, and sensible choices cultivated over the years. Of course, quality pieces beautify not only today, but also the future, because they create a framework that supports both the physical and spiritual being. Thus, in every piece she wears, a woman quietly expresses her maturity, her style, and especially her unique elegance. By the way, I know this is at least the second, maybe even the third video you've watched on my channel, and if you're still not subscribed, I can't help but mention it. It really saddens me, because seeing you here, moving forward together on this journey, is very precious to me. If you subscribe, you will be supporting me in the strongest way possible, and we will never lose each other. Let's move on to the second point right away. 2. Make it a habit to use your voice softly and consciously. In fact, even if we don't realize it, our tone of voice is often the strongest message we convey to the outside world. At the same time, this message has a depth that no other element, from your clothes to your posture, can touch. Because remember, voice is a kind of echo of a person's inner world. So, the more softly, balanced and consciously it is used, the more clearly the elegance conveyed to the other side is felt. In this regard, the experience or inner maturity that mature women possess, let's call it that, actually reveals itself through this very rhythm of voice. Therefore, softening our tone of voice is not just a technical decision related to communication. It is a truly refined behavior that expresses the value a woman places on her own existence. Furthermore, conscious rhythm is a woman's mindful management of her breath, the space between words, the weight of emphasis, and the flow of the sentence while speaking. Such a style of speaking creates a sense of trust in the listener and also makes the speaker feel much more powerful. For example, a harsh, hurried, or high-pitched tone is often an expression of the tension that a person carries within themselves. On the other hand, a voice with a softened rhythm easily calms both the mind and body and frees the heart from unnecessary burdens. In such a situation, a woman's speech is not only heard, it is also felt. It spreads like beautiful ripples and resonates as a call for inner harmony. Let us not forget that softening our voice does not make us appear weak or submissive. On the contrary, it is a tactic that strengthens our authority. Because when our tone softens, emotional management becomes much more skillful. Sudden outbursts, loss of control, and anxious expressions disappear. Women become a center that sets the rhythm of speech and transforms the energy of the environment. In this center, there is no haste, there is no sharpness of anger, there is no anxiety of defense. What is there? Only a flow guided by awareness, conscious grace, and a calmness that carries itself as it is. In short, softening the tone of voice is one of the most crystallized forms of the grace of a woman who has matured over the years. Because this habit arises from listening to one's inner voice. When a woman can calm the waves within herself, every word she utters becomes a reflection of this tranquility. Her tone of voice acts as a refuge in today's fast-paced, noisy, exhausting world. As a result, it offers a calming space both for the woman herself and for everyone she touches. Therefore, soft, rhythmic speech is not just a communication preference, but one of the most effective ways for a woman to carry her own power with grace. 3. Applying light makeup daily to softly highlight our facial features. Let's not forget that light makeup, especially for women who have aged, becomes one of the most subtle, powerful expressions of grace. This approach is not just about changing the face, but also about shedding light on the natural story of the face. The depth, experience, and maturity accumulated over the years never clash with makeup when applied correctly. On the contrary, it becomes much more visible in harmony with it. For this reason, in daily life, softening our facial features with light touches, or rather accentuating them in a way, is like rediscovering a natural echo of one's own existence. Of course, makeup is not a mask here, nor is it a frame. It is a way for a woman to carry herself more comfortably, much more calmly, much more serenely, and frankly, with a more distinguished line. Now, when we have this approach to makeup, when we prioritize using what is right rather than what is excessive, even the freshness provided by a light concealer, for example, or that very light color given to the cheeks, or let me put it this way, the soft light applied around the eyes, the natural tones chosen for the lips. All of these things enhance the overall balance of the face without disrupting it. In fact, they refine that balance even further. Of course, when a woman who applies these techniques and incorporates them into her life on a regular basis has this look, from the outside it may seem as if she is not making any effort at all. But when we think about it, these are the result of conscious taste. In other words, elegance often blossoms easily within this invisible effort. It creates a very powerful aesthetic statement that is both measured and simple. When it comes to defining our facial features, it's not about creating shadows with harsh contours, as many people imagine. On the contrary, it is essentially about directing the light correctly and gently, highlighting the natural curves that the face actually has. Especially when you consider the skin texture of older women, it inevitably tires when weighed down with too much product. But when supported by makeup, it becomes much more breathable, reflects light much better, and of course, the face naturally looks more dynamic. For this reason, let's not forget that light makeup is not just a matter of aesthetics. It is an expression, a sign of genuine respect for the skin. In other words, rather than trying to forcefully change it, we should contribute to its natural harmony. In fact, doing this regularly, making it a habit in our lives, is a dangerous choice that can increase our beauty not twice, but 3 times over. Now, this habit also gives women psychological strength, because a woman who feels much clearer and more whole about herself naturally experiences mental clarity when she starts her day. Light makeup, being free from exaggeration, actually works not as a burden, but as a real support. That is, it becomes a ritual that adapts to the pace of the day and makes a woman feel truly good about herself. Of course, in this case, when a person looks in the mirror and sees themselves in a way they like, this energy inevitably reflects in their walk, their voice, and even their inner calm. In short, when we talk about makeup, we should no longer think of it as just something applied to the face. We should think of it as a tool that also regulates our spirit. In addition to this, what light makeup emphasizes is not youth, but rather radiance or luminosity. The elegance of women who have lived their lives is hidden in the character lines added by the years, in the gentle depth around the eyes, in the wise smile at the corners of the lips. Therefore, there is no point in silencing the natural story of the face with heavy makeup. On the contrary, with light makeup, we can make this story more audible, clearer, and more radiant. Of course, this allows women to reveal the beauty they already possess in a much more pronounced way, rather than trying to look different from who they are. Isn't this the essence of elegance? That is, having an aesthetic approach that seeks to enhance rather than change. 4. Being able to style the hair in ways that lift the natural lines of the face upwards. When we talk about hairstyles, we are actually referring to one of the most powerful supporters of a woman's facial aesthetics. Because, as you know, hair is not just something that accentuates facial features. It is a factor that significantly affects a woman's overall appearance. Therefore, a mature woman's choice of hairstyle is not just a matter of beauty preference. It is also a truly important, strategic, and elegant choice related to correctly reading the natural architecture of the face. The structure of the cheekbones, the prominence of the jawline, the shape of the forehead, and even the overall proportions of the face. All of these things can be made much more balanced, much more harmonious, and truly much more youthful with the right hairstyle. That's why choosing a hairstyle carelessly is, in short, one of the most visible and quickest ways to achieve elegance. But it's a mistake to think that lifting facial features only means trying to look younger for older women. That's wrong. Because, on the contrary, it means carrying the natural maturity of the face in a more aesthetic line, whether it's the right direction at the ends of the hair or the feeling of giving the face a slight upward movement. All of these, just like the cuts that support the jawline and make the lower part of the face look more defined, make the woman's entire expression much more dynamic and lively. Isn't that what elegance is all about? Think about it. Elevating the natural without going overboard. I think that's exactly what it is. 5. Maintaining a much more natural posture by keeping the shoulders back. Let us not forget that posture is actually the most effective expression of a woman's silent relationship, both with herself and with the outside world. It is a sign of this. Because walking with the shoulders back is not just an aesthetic choice, it is also a clear reflection on the body of an inner order, mental clarity, and even self-respect. For an older woman, this posture actually shows that she carries the experience gained over the years, while also being significantly free from the obvious burdens that experience has placed on her. I can say that the more open the posture, the more open the spirit. In other words, we can think of it this way: the more balanced the body, the calmer the thoughts. Therefore, keeping the shoulders back, or rather being able to do so, is a form of physical and spiritual recovery. The most powerful aspect of this practice is that it allows the person to carry their energy upward. Think about it this way. When the shoulders slump forward, it's not just the person's body that closes up. It also causes a problem like constricted breathing. In fact, the ribcage tightens, and even the state of mind drops to a much lower level without being noticed. However, when the shoulders are positioned gracefully backward, our chest opens up nicely. Of course, this also allows the breath to expand and much more oxygen to be carried to the center of the body. This simple movement also makes a woman feel much more alive, much more alert, and truly much more in control. Because posture is not just about outward appearance, it also becomes a truly important mechanism that regulates internal rhythm. As the years go by, the importance of posture naturally begins to increase exponentially. Because, as you might expect, the body's relationship with gravity changes more and more, and muscle tissue inevitably takes on a different form of resilience. Therefore, consciously keeping the shoulders back actually plays a critical role in maintaining spinal health. In other words, thanks to this posture, the static muscles work much more actively, the load on the neck area decreases, and this consequently reduces the tendency to hunch over, which is a problem for many people. The fact that the muscles here work much more evenly is another benefit. In fact, a woman's gait becomes lighter, her steps lengthen, and the overall form of her body takes on a much more elegant line. I can say that posture is actually a sign of self-confidence. In other words, when the body lets go, the spirit also lets go. But when the body rises, the spirit naturally rises with it. Having our shoulders back gives us another advantage. It creates a powerful effect in communication. What I mean is that this posture actually conveys a message to the other person that is confident but not aggressive. It creates something like a silent presence. When people speak with open shoulders, they appear much more understandable, much more assertive, and generally much calmer. This is because openness in posture is linked to openness of mind. Conversely, a closed posture often leaves a defensive or shy impression, whereas an open posture gives the other person a sense of confidence and determination. In fact, elegance is positioned right in the middle of this dilemma. I would say it finds its place, because elegance is being strong yet soft, controlled yet natural. In short, walking with your shoulders back is a form of elegance that seems small but has a huge impact. A woman who can move forward with awareness, without swaying with every step or rushing, conveys a sense of calmness to both herself and her surroundings. This type of posture has an even deeper impact on older women, because, as you know, when combined with the wisdom that comes with maturity, it becomes a signature. 6. Simplify our look with minimalist and high-quality jewelry. Now we come to another important point. Minimalist and high-quality jewelry creates a language of elegance that is actually much more effective than words in a woman's appearance, because these types of pieces emphasize refinement rather than ostentation. As you might expect, this choice has a much deeper meaning for a woman who has aged, because jewelry is not just a simple accessory, it is a means of expression. It makes a person's attitude towards life, their understanding of simplicity, and their self-respect much more visible. While large and exaggerated pieces often distract the eye, minimalist jewelry directs attention to the natural balance of the face and the woman's true presence. Therefore, jewelry selection is not just an aesthetic preference, as most of us might assume. It is also a conscious statement of integrity. The most striking aspect is that truly high-quality pieces can maintain the same elegance for years. For example, a small symbol on a thin gold chain or a simple bracelet can be worn for years without losing its value. It symbolizes the long-lasting harmony the woman has established with her own rhythm of life. In other words, these pieces are an expression of a stance, contrary to the culture of fast consumption. Sometimes wardrobes change, fashion trends come and go, but in every era, I would even say at every age, they continue to fulfill the same elegant role. This strongly demonstrates the sustainability and maturity of a woman's own style. This approach, which simplifies appearance, actually makes the person's face and even body language much more pronounced. Because let's face it, when the eye isn't lost in exaggerated details, it's much easier to see a woman's true expression, especially the natural texture of an older woman, the maturity conveyed by her lines, and the depth of her gaze all become much more pronounced with minimalist jewelry. In this case, jewelry is not a competing element, it's actually more like a supporting frame. We can think of it that way. For example, an elegant hoop earring or a thin chain frames the face comfortably and lightly. This creates a much fresher and more natural look, both in photos and in everyday life. In addition, wearing minimal jewelry is essentially a true sign of sophistication, because this approach focuses not on following trends, but on establishing one's own style. For a mature woman, true elegance lies not in blending into the crowd, but in recognizing her own style and staying true to it. A delicate ring, a small stone detail, or a simple necklace. These are small but powerful symbols that carry a person's essence. And let's not forget that these symbols are the quiet but effective proof of confidence that is far from ostentatious. 7. First, lightly apply the perfume to the wrists and neck. There is undoubtedly one truth. Perfume is actually a woman's most invisible, yet equally effective signature to the outside world, because scent reaches our soul before our eyes. That is, it takes root in the mind before words, and therefore is often like the longest-lasting memory left by a presence. Precisely for this reason, lightly applying perfume to the wrists and especially the neck area is not just a beauty ritual. It is actually one of the finest details, one of the most delicate formulas of elegance. Because intensive applications, which are generally used by those unfamiliar with these things, often weigh down the scent. On the contrary, light applications carry the scent like a whisper. This is precisely where elegance comes into play. Just think, a trace that is not imposing but unforgettable when sensed. Since the wrist and neck are the areas where the scent spreads most naturally, light application has a very high impact here. Because these areas have much more active blood flow, the perfume combines with body heat and unfolds comfortably and softly throughout the day. Especially in older women, this technique breaks the sharpness of the scent, giving it a much more sophisticated air, and the perfume does not clash with you. On the contrary, I can say that it dances or blends in harmony with your own warm expression. Thus, the scent becomes a part of the woman, creating the perception that it is not a scent sprayed on from the outside, but rather the woman's natural scent. 8. Adopting a truly minimalist style with a simple bag free of excess. There is a reality that a woman's bag is often a subconscious reflection of her style. It's not what's inside it, but how it is chosen with an understanding of simplicity that gives us strong clues about her character. Thinking this way, choosing a simple bag, free of excess, creates a much more impressive elegance, especially in mature women. This choice combines order and aesthetic intelligence in equal measure. Bags that are overflowing, heavy, and especially burdensome to the wearer are often a symbol of mental clutter. A simple bag, on the other hand, is the signature of control, peace, and conscious living. We could even say that using a minimalist bag is like a decision to lighten up. Because when a woman chooses to reduce her daily baggage, it doesn't just create physical relief. It also provides a clarity of mind that may even surprise her. The clutter inside the bag is often a reflection of the unnecessary details in life. In this case, clearing out this clutter is like ridding oneself of unnecessary details. For mature women, this is a truly wise stance against the pace of the modern world. Carrying less actually means more freedom in a way. In other words, a simpler bag adds lightness to a woman's walk, balance to her body, and elegance and refinement to her appearance. At the same time, carrying a minimal bag has great benefits in creating combinations. Since simple designs blend more naturally with every style, women can comfortably use the same piece in both everyday and more elegant settings. This provides both an economic and aesthetic advantage. It also prevents women from expending unnecessary effort when putting together outfits. Thanks to this practicality, women can devote more time to themselves and realize that as they eliminate excess from their lives, they create much more space for themselves. Thus, a simple bag becomes a truly important tool that serves not only beauty and elegance, but also, in a way, quality of life. 9. Choosing lipstick shades that enhance the skin's natural warmth. In fact, lipstick is one of the most effective touches that can transform a woman's face the fastest, while also emphasizing elegance. This is because lip color instantly changes the overall expression of the face and creates a very powerful focal point. Opting for shades that enhance the skin's natural warmth can create a much more elegant, sophisticated effect, especially for women who have aged. This choice adds vibrancy without compromising the face's natural look. By harmonizing with the woman's own skin tone, the appearance becomes much brighter, more radiant, fresh, and balanced. Therefore, lipstick shade is not merely a cosmetic preference. It is a strategic decision that supports the entire architecture of the face. Colors with warm undertones, such as honey, warm pink, coral, or shades with a slight reddish undertone, easily warm up the cooler areas of the face. They reduce the dullness that years have added to the skin and also highlight the natural fullness of the lips. Excessively dark or overly cool tones, on the other hand, can cause the lips to harden, the expression to become sharp, and the face to look much older. Therefore, tones that increase warmth preserve the softness of the face. they help women achieve a mature and elegant look. Thus, lip color becomes a true complementary element that enhances the skin's own radiance rather than a detail that clashes with it. 10. Avoiding excessive glamour and focusing on natural radiance. Avoiding excessive glamour and focusing on natural radiance is the foundation of elegance. Because a woman's elegance often emerges not from what she adds, but strangely enough, from what she subtracts. Excessive glamour distracts attention from the person and makes the image noisy and cluttered. This can obscure the face's natural harmony. This balance is even more important for women who have aged, because the maturity and wisdom that come with years are already a natural glow. Reducing ostentation is not a choice that simplifies a woman, but one that brings her much closer to her true self. When we focus on natural radiance, a woman's presence is highlighted with a quiet but effective light. This approach encompasses many elements, from skin radiance to the texture of clothing, from the simplicity of jewelry to the flow of hair. While exaggerated details create noise, natural textures produce tranquility. Think of a clean complexion that reflects radiance instead of flashy identities. Simple metal textures instead of ostentatious jewelry, and harmonious color blocks instead of intense patterns. All of this creates a much wider breathing space for a woman's face and posture. This approach creates a backdrop that makes beauty visible and becomes a mirror that reflects the natural light of the face. Ultimately, steering clear of excessive glitz and focusing on natural radiance is a formula for elegance that effectively highlights both the outer beauty and inner harmony of a mature woman. This approach combines the refinement of simplicity with the power of maturity, choosing depth, not noise, not exaggeration, but essence. This choice creates a light that seems to grow over time in the woman's entire appearance. A very radiant light that is noticeable even in its quietest state. 11. Protecting our skin and hair by using silk or satin pillowcases. Now, many of us may initially think of using silk or satin pillowcases as a luxury, but that's not really the case, because it is actually one of the quietest but most effective beauty habits that protects skin and hair health. Think about it this way. The surface that comes into contact with the skin during sleep deeply affects many factors, from the moisture absorbed by the skin to the risk of hair breakage. Of course, for older women in particular, the quality of this contact is one of the most important factors determining how rested their facial features will look when they wake up in the morning. For this reason, silk or satin pillowcases are not just a comfortable material. They are a long-term investment that combines elegance with care. That's how we should see them, I would say. From a skin perspective, cotton pillowcases naturally tend to absorb moisture. However, this can weaken the skin's natural moisture barrier throughout the night, making fine lines more pronounced and giving the face a much duller appearance. Let's not forget that silk and satin, thanks to their smooth texture, do not draw moisture from the skin. On the contrary, they help moisture stay on the skin, providing a significant benefit. This small difference provides great relief, especially for dryness problems that increase with age. Our face wakes up in the morning looking smoother, more radiant, and more rested. Thus, the pillowcase is not just a textile product. It actually becomes a kind of protective layer that accompanies the skin from night to morning. The effect of this practice on hair is even more pronounced. Rough surfaces cause hair strands to rub, break, and frizz. Of course, this is a problem that is particularly evident in fine or damaged hair. When we use silk or satin surfaces, friction on the hair is reduced and smoothness is created. Thus, breakage is reduced throughout the night, curls remain more defined, and even the time needed for styling in the morning is reduced. In fact, This respect for the hair's texture makes a huge difference in a woman's daily care routine. Because let's not forget that our hair gets much less tired and damaged. This also gives it a natural shine. 12. Creating an extra care routine for the lips and eye area. As we all know, the lips and eye area are among the most delicate, sensitive, and earliest aging areas of our face, so they require special attention. In other words, these areas are the points most intensely affected by both our facial expressions and daily environmental factors. For older women, caring for these areas is not just a cosmetic need. It is also a strategic choice that carries the entire meaning of the face. The thin skin around the eyes, the natural lines that form around the lips, and the dryness we all know can be made much softer with the right routine rather than becoming more pronounced. For this reason, extra care is not just a luxury for everyone, as it is often thought. It is also one of the fundamental building blocks of mature elegance. Lightweight, moisture-rich products used around the eyes not only reduce the appearance of fine lines, but also enhance the area's natural radiance. As the under-eye skin thins over the years, incorporating a good cream or serum into your skincare routine easily increases skin elasticity, reduces dark circles, and creates a much more vibrant look. In fact, this small application, done in a disciplined and simple way, seriously changes the overall energy of the face when we wake up in the morning. The more rested the eyes look, the fresher the whole face looks. It is not youth that beautifies a mature woman's expression. It is radiance. Ultimately, establishing an extra care routine for the lips and eye area is a powerful habit that blends aesthetics, health, and mental balance in women of a certain age. Naturally, the care shown to these areas is also one of the most visible expressions of a woman's self-respect. To briefly summarize these detailed strategies, I have outlined in 12 points. The elegance of an older woman is not so much about visible details, but rather the silent accumulation of the conscious care she shows herself. Because think about it. From the way she holds her shoulders back to the quality of the fabric she chooses, from the softness of her voice to the warm tone she applies to her lips, from the harmony her hair creates to her decision to spend the night in the comfort of silk. In fact, all of these small steps carry her presence to a much stronger, much clearer, and truly much more flawless line. These habits rearrange both a woman's external appearance and the rhythm of her inner world, opening the door to an aesthetic that is free from ostentation, natural, and sustainable. What ultimately emerges is not just a more elegant silhouette. It is the signature of a woman who knows herself, who can invest in herself, and who proudly carries the light of her maturity. Remember that this signature is much more enduring than any fashion trend, and I want to end with this detail. Women are the real people with the power to change the world. Boldly forge your own path and savor every moment. I say this with conviction in every video. I love you, and I want you to love yourself too.